Welcome. Gawai Wadaplango. It's really great to be here. I, of course, have a great connection with Taiwan, as people have mentioned, and so I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to share with you our common future. And if I could have my slides, that would be great. So you can see I have technology all over here. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that is my symbol for optimism. And I got a lot of my optimism from Taiwan. From my first visit in Taiwan 40 years ago, it was a very different place than it is today. And I could see, even then, it began to transform itself to become one of the wealthiest places on earth. And that vision of it changing almost daily gave me optimism in the belief that almost anything was possible. And I want to extend that optimism back to you, to indicate that we are actually, despite some of the recent news, economically, we're actually on a journey towards progress, that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And I wanted to take some time to talk about specifically what some of those things would look like. And I have to say, I did not consult with Johnny Shear about his vision, but we actually agree on a lot of the things. You'll see some echoes of the same vision, because I think that's where we're going to. So one of the things I want to start with is the fact that Wired Magazine began before the web, and we were involved in talking about the web and what we expected the web to be, and we were wrong. Everybody was wrong about the web. We all expected it to be something like television, but only better. You could get 500 channels, and it would be made by these producers who would give you whatever you wanted. Of course, the main event of the web has been the social aspect, the fact that the users have been creating all the good stuff. It hasn't been AOL or Time Warner. It's been the users who have made it. We missed that. Wired missed that. That was not what anybody was expecting. And so I think right now we're looking at the web, the digital world, and we're thinking it's going to be like that, but better. And I think we're going to be wrong. It's not better web, just like the web is not better TV. We're making something that's actually going to look very different. We have lots of different names that we're trying out what to call that. But I want to indicate that I think we're going to be very surprised, and there's not just going to be like the web and web pages and more of the same. I'd like to talk about the fact that we can measure the extent of this entire thing that has happened in the number of days. It gives us a sense that we're actually still at the very beginning. The entire web browser, from the days of the first web browsers like Netscape till now, we're about 7,000 days. And so if you think about all the things that have happened that we now have in 7,000 days, and I'd like to say if you could go back to 1990 or even earlier, but even 1990, and if I was to come back and report to people back in 1990 and tell them what we have now, we have this search thing tells you answers. We have Google, we have maps to the entire world and the streets. We have every sports score. We have stock quotes flowing constantly from around the world. We have the weather of any place in the world that you want. We have an encyclopedia that's better than Encyclopedia Britannica. We have all this stuff. It goes on and on. I can spend an hour telling you about the amazing things that we have. And most of it's free. Somebody back then would tell you there is no way that's possible. There's no economic model that could make that thing work. And so we have to get better at believing things that seem to be impossible. So I'm going to tell you maybe some things that seem unlikely or impossible, and to keep that in mind, that oftentimes things that do happen seem impossible at the time. So I have 4 general trends, reflecting the minister's 4 trends. I have 4 trends I want to talk about. And the first trend is screening. We are being surrounded by screens everywhere. Screens that we stroke and are very close to our bodies, and screens that, how does this work? Okay. Screens that are being used by kids that are very intimate from the babyhood days. And in addition to the screens, we have voice, Siri, and others. We're increasing the ways that we interact with these screens. We actually will talk to them. We'll talk to the screens. And each screen has an eyeball in it, has a camera in it that's looking at us as we watch the screen. So as we're watching the screen is looking back at us. And that screen is watching us watch the screen, meaning that there's a kind of interactivity, a relationship with our screens. So it's not that they're everywhere, and by everywhere I mean literally in the goodness of time, every surface, every flat surface will have a display on it. Even if that display is just showing wallpaper, it can be changed. And so it's not glass, it's kind of a plastic, or it's printed. It's as cheap as paint. And those screens will be on every flat surface, every curved surface. That's going to be the world of ubiquitous screens that we're going into. And this will happen slowly, but we can already see the screens happening everywhere. And these screens, again, have cameras in them that are watching us as we watch them, so that you have things like eye tracking, which can be done now, showing you where you're paying attention to, what you're paying attention to, how long you're paying attention to it. The work at MIT Media Lab is showing an ability to actually discern our emotion, whether what we're looking at, are we perplexed by it, confused, are we distracted, are we hurt by it, or are we enjoying it? And so there's a sense in which we are engaged in these screens, and then is also detecting our mood so that it can then adapt to what we're seeing, what we're watching. What's being shown is adapting to our own emotions, just as if we were in a conversation, and if I notice that you were not paying attention, I might change the subject, or I might focus on something else that we talked about before. So in the same way, these screens are going to respond, and there's kind of an adaptive sense in which the movie, or the video, or the text, or the game is responding to us watching it. So these screens are not passive. They're actually active screens. And they're responding to, of course, our gestures. And you saw some of that in the video which was just shown, in the sense that we're using our whole bodies. It's just not our fingertips talking. It's our gesturals. We dance. We interact with these with our arms. And we have some examples, of course, in the movies of Minority Report and Iron Man, where they're engaged in kind of these very complex data sets, and they're using their bodies, they're conducting, they're swinging arms. It's a whole body interaction with these screens. Even though the screens are kind of 3D screens, nonetheless, they're a display. So, and of course, recently, I haven't updated this since the news, but I've been talking about it for a while, we see the coming screens into our spectacles. Google announced the Google glasses. These were prototypes, but they actually have one now, where there's a picture of Sergey Brin wearing one of these. And again, they're overlaying this digital world on top of the world that we see. And I think that's very important, but the crucial idea is that these are screens that we wear. So this is going to become very big, very fast. People are often saying, what's after the smartphone? This is after the smartphone. This is after the tablet. These spectacles understanding, making how we can actually use them, navigate them, manipulate them, incorporate them into our daily lives. And so even screens that we wear. But what we're going to see with these is this overlay of the virtual world, the information world, put on top of and embedded into the physical world. And this overlay of augmented worlds, where the two worlds are converging, and we see the data laid in so that we have kind of an X-ray view, a superpower of actually being able to see into the information of things. It's not a separate world. And this is an important point. The virtual digital world is not separate. The two converge into a single world. And they will partly do that with these screens that we wear. So, at the same time, screens are becoming ubiquitous and devices are shrinking away from our view. The success of innovation and invention in a device is often the ability for it to disappear from our lives. In a certain sense, the ideal situation is that we carry no devices at all, and that the screens around us are watching us and are interacting us with our natural movements and our natural gestures, and that from that without any devices, they're actually able to recognize us and to interact with us. So the screens are proliferating and becoming ubiquitous, and the devices ideally actually disappear just as motors have the motors of the Industrial Revolution were huge and big, and they disappeared even though there's hundreds of motors in this room that we're not even aware of, including one right here. That was because motors have succeeded. And in the same way, some of these devices will succeed by disappearing from our possession. So, screens, that's the first theme of this world. Screens everywhere, ubiquitous screens, screens as a center, screens as the center of our culture. So we were, at least in the West, people of the book. The book was central. We had Book of Laws, we had the Constitution, we had the Bible, we had everything written down, and the center of our culture and education was the book. Now we've become people of the screen, and the screen is the center of the culture, and screens have a different culture. They have a different dynamic. They behave differently, and they generate a different kind of culture. The idea of truth in the book era was the author, who was the authority. Author and authority have the same common root in English. And in truth, in the screen world, is not based on authors. It's based on relations and connections, associations. That's good and bad, but that's where we're going to. So the screen is the center of this era that we're headed into. And the second idea is flowing. So this is a chart of the amount of information on the planet. And information is being increased at basically 66.5% a year, which is Moore's Law. It's doubling every 18 months. It's the fastest expanding entity on this planet. There's no manufactured thing that we're making as fast over sustained decades. There's no biological thing growing that fast. Information, we're an information planet at this point. And so it's just, that is the currency, that is the fuel of the new economy, and that's what's rapidly expanding. And part of the wealth will be in actually being able to harness that growth, and to manage it, and to decipher it, and filter it, and analyze it. Metadata, so here's the reason why that's going up so fast, is that every time we make some new information, we make information about the information, which is growing even faster. So whenever you sell something or generate a sales, that's a piece of information, and then the information about that sales grows even, there's 3 or 4 other things to say about that piece of information. So this information is growing at such a rate that it's actually exploding. And someone did a calculation showing that the rate of this digital universe is expanding at, it's expanding at the rate of an explosion. It's like a piece of TNT exploding. That's how fast this information is expanding on this planet. So there's an example, just a little chart of exabytes. We didn't have exabytes a couple years ago. Now we have 276 exabytes, and there's a lot of zeros at the end of that. It's a lot of information, and there's no end in sight of how much information we can actually potentially even generate. So that information is this other world. That information is this other economy. And we're putting little tiny chips of intelligence into everything we make, into the chairs. Into every chair will have a little chip in it. Your shoes, with Nike is doing it. And your clothes. The doorknobs in hotels have computers in them. Everything will have a little tiny chip in it, a little tiny bit of intelligence. And even more so, we can think of these things like this car. Most of the cost of that car is not in the material, is not in the carbon or the aluminum or even the rubber. It's in the electronics and the computation and the design, all the intangibles. So this shoe, Nike shoe, is really kind of a chip that has heels on it, and that's a chip with wheels on it. We have to understand that these things are primarily informational devices. That's the value is not in the materials, the value is in the information and the intangibles, and that we're connecting all these things together into this Internet of Things. So it's not just the Internet of people, it's the Internet of Things, all these stuff connected to each other. Most of the communication bandwidth in the world today is already machines talking to other machines. Humans talking to other humans is a smaller and smaller part of the total amount of this economy. Most of it is machines, things talking to other things. And so we have this database of things. You can think of it as a worldwide database. The semantic web, these are terms. This is the ubiquitous cloud. It's this thing, the larger one thing of all the other things that have little bits of intelligence and chips in them connected together to make this very large brain. And I did a calculation showing that the number of transistors and the number of computers connected in this larger brain, larger web worldwide is about the same number of neurons in a human brain. The number of web pages in the world is about the same number of synapses in a human brain, so that the thing we've made of this world is almost the same complexity as our own brains. The shift that we're having right now is that this information is the amount of information and the flows of information has shifted to the third regime of computing, of personal computing. The first regime was files and folders and desktops. It was taking the metaphor of the office. And that was the PC generation. So it was kind of just like, it just took the desktop, the office metaphor, and that's what we had. We had files and folders and desktops. The second generation was the web. We had pages and links, and that was the web. But we've now moved into the third regime, the third organizing principle, and that is one that's based on streams and tags and cloud. So rather than have pages, we have streams. We have Facebook updates. We have Twitter streams. We've got Netflix streams. We've got Google Plus streams. We've got streams and streams of everything. It all flows in real time, and it's a stream of data. And that shifts. So we've gone, in this third iteration, we're moving from pages to streams, from the PC as the center to the cloud as the center, from the today as being the currency to now to real time. The shift from me, the personal computer, to the we of the social web, and the shift as the unit, as items of things, to data. That's part of this shift to the new paradigm. And everything flows into that. Again, it's not just data that we're generating as individuals, but that my shoe is generating, my shirt is generating, my doorknob is generating, my house is generating, my room is generating. All this stuff is flowing into this cloud. It's everywhere. And the data is always moving. We talk about storage, but I don't think storage is the right word. I think we want to talk about movage because it's constantly moving. If you put something on a CD-ROM, you're not going to be able to read a CD-ROM in a couple of years. You've got to move it to some other form or factor, and if you want to really save it, you have to keep moving things. So things are moving around, and they're constantly moving, so we have this movage. Things are always moving, they're always on, right? If those things are always on, and so, and it's in real time. If it's not in real time, it doesn't count. So there is a sense, there's just streams and flows. Not static web pages, but this kind of ocean of streams and flows flowing through of data. Okay, so that's the new media. That's the new platform. Flows of data. So here's the third trend that we're seeing, and that is sharing. That's been mentioned before, this idea of the social. And these live streams that people make, they generate when they intersect with one another. There is a sharing. There is intersection. And life logging is something that I've been following and encouraging people to think about. It has something to do with quantifying, and basically, if you have a stream of everything you do, every keystroke, every picture you upload, that's life logging. So people are more and more funneling their entire life through this stream, where they add everything to the stream, and their lives become this chronological stream. That's called life logging. And if you include everything, then you're a life logger. But you can also share all this stuff. So here's Gordon Bell at Microsoft, who had a little camera he was wearing, and took a picture every 5 seconds, so he had complete documentation of everybody he met, everything he saw. He recorded all his keystrokes, he recorded all his conversations. He's sort of obsessive, crank, extremist, but that's the new normal. Okay, that's where we're all going to be going. We're all going to be recording everything because it costs very little. And there'll be many, many benefits to it. So there's body logging, people who are tracking everything in their bodies, and they're doing things like the Fitbit, which I'm wearing right here, okay, which records my steps and activities. It can actually even records sleeping patterns. And these are going to be the basis of the new health technology. There's ones that you wear that record oxygen, glucose, all kinds of bodily factors, and eventually we'll be recording everything about its location, mood, health, and that self-quantification is the foundation of the health, will be the foundation of the health industry. And by the way, this is also, I think, a tremendous opportunity for Taiwan, because this is engineering, which you're really great at. This is healthcare, which you're really great at. This is quality of life, which you're really great at. This is a combination of technology and lifestyle. And I think the quantified self is this movement of trying to quantify automatically our entire lives into a data stream. So I have this data stream, and I can look back at it. I can find out what's normal for me, for my own body. When medicine and science talk about normal in humans, they actually don't know. The normal is an average. And there's nobody who is average medically. And so we actually don't know what your normal is. And so we can find out what your normal is by self-quantifying and wearing this stuff and having it in our clothes, in our shoes, in our seats, everywhere. So these are just some examples of some of the current technology of self-quantification. Feeding into this data stream. So any data that can be shared will be shared. And this is the other amazing discovery about human nature, is that there's a long list of things that people said nobody would share. They're not going to share financial information. They're not going to share health information. Wrong, 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 wrong. We'll share anything under the right circumstances, the right benefits. Anything that can be shared will be shared somewhere under the right conditions, with the right permissions. And I think that brings up a whole bunch of questions which we don't know. Nobody knows the answers to these. These are some of the fundamental paradoxes, mysteries of the current world is who owns these kinds of, who owns the data, what's ownership like in this world of shared information? Is it the person who claims that they own it? Is it both sides own it? Does who owns it? We don't know. These are all unanswered questions, only to indicate that this is a huge frontier. But I have to say one thing about privacy, because it always comes up in the questions, and that is that privacy is a matter of disclosure and benefits. The benefits of personalization, in order to have something to be personalized, which is another one of these trends, you have to reveal yourself. If you want something to be ultimately 100% personalized to you, you have to reveal yourself to that company or the friend or the government, whatever it is that you want. If you want to be treated as an individual, you have to reveal yourself as an individual to them. So it's kind of sliding. If you don't want to reveal yourself, you can be hidden, you can be unknown, but you also will be treated generically, not as an individual. So there's a slider that goes back and forth, where if you want maximum transparency, you can get maximum personalization. If you don't want that, if you want to be private and generic, that's fine too. But the whole thing is a slider. And I think what we're finding out, the huge surprise to everybody was that generally people push that slider to personalization and transparency. We're far more interested in moving it to the transparent side and sharing it. That's where it goes. Nobody really kind of expected that. So I like to say vanity trumps privacy. Okay, almost every time. We didn't think that's what human nature is, but that's what we're finding out. So you do want to have another axis, which is being able to control what happens to the information. And that is something that we need to work on, because we don't, what happens to it, who else gets to know about it, and so forth. So there's many dimensions to this idea of this ubiquitous world. We're sharing all this information. I think the word privacy is not a very good word, because it means lots of different things, and we need to unbundle and unravel some of those things. But these are big issues when we're talking about this world of ubiquitous computation, ubiquitous digital life. What happens to these issues? And I think there are ways to think about them that we haven't been using. I would say, though, that we're just at the beginning of a sharing meter. On the meter of sharing from 1 to 100, I think we're still down in the single digits in terms of the amount that we're sharing and the potential that we have to share more. We've just begun this process. People get upset about Facebook, kids sharing on Facebook. They haven't seen anything yet in terms of the amount of stuff that we're going to share. So the last trend is called accessing. And that is this idea that, very briefly, in this future world, the idea of ownership starts to diminish in its attractiveness. It turns out that owning things would be less positive than actually having access to something. You see that with movies and music, and eventually books and games, and the intangible world, where there's really very little advantage to owning something, and there's a tremendous preference to having access to that, which you will pay for. So I'm not saying it's free, I'm saying you can pay for access, but you don't have to keep it updated, you don't have to store it, you don't have to back it up, you don't have to get the latest version. You just pay your money to have access to all the music in the world from your device or from your home, or access to every movie that's ever been made, or any book. And that is something that will begin in the digital world, but will actually flow over into the physical world as it becomes easier to ship things around or make things. The benefits of owning things become less relevant. And I think zip cars and other kinds of things, hosting, all these things are indicating that ownership is really not as important in this world. So there is a shift from ownership to access. Ownership to access is the other shift, other trend that we're going to see here. just-in-time buying where you don't actually, because you have access to it, like on your Kindle, there's actually no reason for you ever to buy a book until 5 minutes before you're ready to read it, because you have access to it anywhere in the world, anytime. Why? It's just-in-time purchasing. There's no reason to ever buy anything ahead of the minute that you actually need it. So, access is better than ownership. So, let me just end with the summary of these ideas. Screening. The world's going to screens. It's going to flows of data. It's going to sharing of this stuff. And it's going to access over ownership. And so the last thing I want to say about that is again, that we're at the beginning of this. That just as much as all this stuff has changed in the last 7,000 days, it's going to change even more in the next 7,000 days. It really is. It's not going to look like web pages done better. It's going to look very different. It's this ubiquitous connection of all data, of all our data being collected and moved up. It's not static. It's very kinetic. Even the screens are interactive. It's a cloud that the ideas of ownership are being questioned, and the devices themselves will continue to specialize, even though we'll have the Swiss Army knife of the smartphone. But I think the other message that I want to really emphasize is that you're not late. Nobody's late. You're not late. This is at the very beginning. You're present at the beginning. Right here, you have as much chance as anybody to make this possible. So, thank you for your attention, and I know that we have some questions and all that kind of stuff. So thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to start the panel. 让我们欢迎论坛主持人、台北悠游卡公司董事长刘义成先生 ，ASUS 华硕电脑董事长施崇堂先生，行政院政务委员张善政先生 ，and our VIP guest from San Francisco, the technology visionary Mr. Kelly. Please take a seat. 请坐。接下来的时间就交给今天论坛主持人、台北悠游卡公司董事长刘义成先生。
Thanks again. It's my greatest honor to sit by the most prestigious speaker I could think of in Taiwan, and also most knowledgeable audience here. I think Kevin has been away from Taiwan for about 3,000 days already, right? So even they actually have a really good title about prediction in the near 1,000 days. He already provide you from today to 7,000 days later. And also Johnny have a very good fundamental thing about what's going to change. It's also the same thing from today to 7,000 later. And we have Minister without portfolio, Dr. Simon Chen also joined us. So the first question is not going to the 7,000 days later yet. A lot of people already say that the post-PC era is just around the corner. If the PC really disappeared, so how do you think about the consumer is going to react? And also, which kind of a fundamental change is going to have in our life? So I think we would go this order from Kevin, Johnny to Simon to share with us your thoughts on that.
So, I think it's important to understand that the PC doesn't disappear. There will be plenty of PCs. I think what is shifting is that it's no longer the center of the culture. It's no longer the center of the work. There are going to be plenty of them, and that's the nature of technological evolution. It rarely do the old things go away. They're just added. The new ones are added on top. So we still have the option of a laptop if somebody wants it, or the PC. And there'll be lots of them in the world. But I think what we go to is we go to something where, as I was saying, it's social, it's local, it's mobile. That is where we're going to. But I don't think there's just going to be a single device. I don't think there's just going to be one thing. There will be the Swiss Army knife that does everything pretty good, but there will be specialized versions like the Kindle, which is social and local and mobile. There will be tablets. There will be cameras continue to get interesting and more smarter and GPS oriented, doing things that we didn't expect. There are these other, again, these devices I'm talking about also, which are health related. It can be social and mobile and local. So I'm suggesting that there is going to be not just a single device, but many devices. And then some people like myself want to carry none of them. And I think all those things are going to go on at the same time. The future is not a single destiny. There's not there's no convergence on one thing. What we're seeing is the message is there's always more and more and more options, more and more choices. There's more different kinds of cars now than there were before. There's more varieties of everything. There's more varieties of mustard in the grocery store. There's going to be more choices for people rather than fewer.
I think actually don't be affected by the video I show with all of you. I think that may be a little bit longer term in terms of like the panorama kind of holographic projection. Maybe in terms of the technical feasibility, I think the flexible display will be earlier than this kind of panorama display. But I think I mentioned that actually it's not really that far away because we are already at the critical crossroads, of this transformation. So from the personal computing era to the ubiquitous cloud computing era. But actually, the personal computing also has to transform. That's why I mentioned that the boundaries among the notebooks, tablets, and also the smartphones are blurring. So the most important thing is like what I mentioned from the design thinking concept. We always have to start from the people, from the life experience. So that is very sure that is happening. We talk about the slow-mo, real time, real place, real personalized. Anyway, it's happening. And now, if I talk from the industry point of view, the personal computer actually before, like if you look at the Intel, I think the contribution of the personal computing era actually is huge compared with the previous mainframe and mini computer. Because of the open industry, actually you can enjoy such a low-cost hardware and software. Okay, it never happened in the mainframe and mini computer time. But anyway, anything will change. So the open system advantage, I still believe, still there. So it's only when the personal computer has to transform. For example, today's processor, like Intel's processor, they still have better performance than the ARM-based, processor, from the smartphone or the tablets. But if you look at what they are projecting, I think they are also trying to drive, maybe similar performance but less power consumption, so that they can also get into, the tablet or the smartphone, envelope. So. And the ARM, from the current microarchitecture, I think the performance still cannot be compared, to the, like the Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge today, because the Ivy Bridge and Sandy Bridge, if you look at the microarchitecture very deeply, you will see that, to drive the performance at the same time, the process will watch around 400 instructions at the same time. and see which one you can execute first. Today's ARM even go to the most advanced architecture like the Cortex A15. That's the most advanced, like recently from Qualcomm, and very soon you will see from other like the NVIDIA or from TI. I think at most this kind of performance can only up to like at the same time you watch around 40 instructions at the same time. So I think both are transforming, okay? And the whole purpose is to adapt to the ubiquitous cloud computing. So the key is, because the people, they need, this kind of new life experience. So all the technology, that's why I mentioned that, the whole industry is reshuffling. It's reshuffling, including the operating systems, including, the processors, including the content providers, service providers, the app developers, all changing, including many of us. So I think this new era, but I believe, this kind of open system concept. I think we may talk about that later, yeah.
Okay. I remember there was a saying from a World War II General MacArthur. He said, an old soldier never died. He just somehow, I forgot the second sentence. In Mandarin it says, I rephrase that into a PC. A PC would never die, it just transforms. So if you look at, say, for example, if you look at this cell phone, this small cell phone. I'm sorry I'm not using a Swiss cell phone. But basically, if you look at the previous generation, the non-smart cell phone, it has all the keystroke, right? Keypad. But here you see a lot of features from PC has been embedded because the CPU is more powerful now. So it is capable to accommodate more features. And so a lot of features from a PC has been embedded into a smartphone. So basically, I would say the smartphone is not the traditional cell phone anymore. It's a traditional cell phone combined with some PC or notebook features. So I was saying, as I said, the PC will not die, it's just transformed. And if you look at another direction, you mentioned Kindle, right? Kindle is a more or less specialized device for reading ebooks. So one way to transform the features of a PC or notebook is to make specialized devices like Kindle. But again, if you look at Kindle Fire, which embedded more general features of a PC into a specialized Kindle, you can use Kindle Fire for more general purposes. So you see, even for Amazon Kindle, the feature of the device is moving back and forth between a specialized device and a more generalized device. So I think in the future, the physical form of the PC will definitely change. I think the features of the PC, the feature of our notebook will be transformed into different devices, either specialized, special purpose devices, or smart devices in only a much smaller form factor. So I would say PC has created a portfolio of capabilities that a lot of devices can emulate or copy without really being constrained by the physical form factor of a big PC.
May I add some more comments? I think if you look at today's performance, I think the tablet, even the tablet or the smartphone you mentioned, I think are still more suitable for like the media consumption, browsing, and really for productivity. I think for very professional kind of processing, I think the PC still prevail, but this is changing. As you mentioned that, the ARM currently, the Cortex A15 actually already improved quite a bit compared with the Cortex A9. So I think this will keep improving. But I think eventually I believe from users' point of view, from the ubiquitous cloud computing point of view, I think there is no way to separate, work and entertainment. So eventually, we still will see, one day that the performance of the smartphone and also, the tablet will be able to also cover like the productivity. I think you will see like the Office running in Windows 8 tablet very soon, right? So I think this is all happening. Yeah, all happening.
So one thing I would say is I think there's a general movement of the form factor, and again, I think we should not. I think we should be ready for something that's disruptive. So the PC in kind of general form factor was a box. There are boxes, and now we have this thing where it's a slab, and we're thinking that all the future devices will be slabs. But I'm suggesting that I think that they don't necessarily have to be slabs. Hard slab thing. You can have an e-book that actually looks like a book. There's 500 really thin e-ink pages that are flexible, that you turn, that are bound into a book. It looks like a book, but it's an e-book. It's not a slab. You can have your screens, your device can be spectacles, a pair of glasses that fold up. They don't look like a slab. There could be other things that are much more flexible or unfold. And so I'm just suggesting that the slab is not the ultimate end of the form factor. And that we can expect more, as things become more flexible, more organic or plastic or something, we can imagine things that unfold or that are different shapes or bound in leaves or whatever. This may not happen in 5 years, but I think beyond that time we can expect again a shift in the form factor.
Let me talk a little bit in more short term. I think you mentioned that it's 5,000 days, but I think we also have to look at a more short term issue. Actually, the whole form factor is a very important issue, and if you really watch that, I think we talk about the PC, right? The PC actually, you can deliver, high performance, but unfortunately because, the power consumption, so the thermal is a big issue. So that's why you still have the clamshell. So the main processing is in the bottom side, not in the screen. But the tablet and smartphone actually, because the power consumption, you don't need, the thermal, you don't need the fan. So actually the processing is together with the screen. So screen is always, important, right? But how about the rest, the portion? So the form factor, actually, I think that's why we have to watch, the different kind of scenarios. Even we get into the ubiquitous cloud computing. The reason we try to, to drive the transformer concept is, if you really think about the productivity, when you are in a cafe or in the study room, in a library, you still like to have the keyboard, right? So it becomes important, So the form factor has to adapt to different kind of usage scenarios. So the screen is the main hero, but how about the other things? So even we get into the ubiquitous cloud computing, this kind of form factor concept, I think is also very important. You have to look at the different kind of usage scenario, and then see how to adapt to that. Within there is still a lot of innovation that you can drive. Yeah.
Pardon me for asking these kind of very basic questions. Well, even the question is not I prepared, but I still think it's really good, especially you talk about how in the future the general purpose device versus the specialized device. I think people will see where in 5 years' time the e-book really look like what Kevin just mentioned. So we have a follow-up question. I think Johnny, maybe you answer this question last because the question is about competition. A lot of newspapers saying that the post PC era, the major competitor is going to be Apple, Google, and Samsung. None of them are Taiwanese companies. How you guys look at this one? Is that going to be true, or you have a different opinion? And the follow-on question is, Taiwan used to be very famous as a manufacturing center. So how Taiwan going to reposition ourselves in this kind of technology transformation? So number one is the competition between the players. Number two is the competition between different countries or economies. That's basically the question.
My observation about competition is that usually the competitors people think they have are actually wrong about who the competitors really are, in the sense that disruptions usually come out of or beyond the agents they think are their competitors. And so you listed those set of people as the competitor. I would not be surprised if the real competitors in that 5,000 days were someone that you didn't mention. So that's all I would say, is that the real competitors are usually outside of the circle that you think are your competitors. In terms of what Taiwan should do, I can't advise. But so I'll let, you know, I mean, I don't know the way you frame that question. What should Taiwan do? I think, as we were talking earlier, but I think it's important to realize in terms of also competitors that there is a huge commonality, a huge emerging global culture, and that whatever competition for distinction that a country attempts, it has to be done with the knowledge that there is more and more commonness between countries. That competition has to be done in a unified kind of global economy and a global culture. And that makes it a little bit more artful to do that, because you are at the same time becoming more and more tightly dependent and codependent and involved, and the culture is being shared. The young people are watching the same movies, listening to the same music, playing the same games, and so there is a universal culture that's emerging. So being distinctive has to be done in the context that you're also becoming at the same time more common.
I think this is a fair question, so I will try my best to answer. Actually, let me talk about the Taiwan industry first. I think in the past, 3 decades, the personal computing era actually, gave Taiwan a good opportunity, especially starting from the OEM, driving, the efficiency, driving the cost, driving the speed. You look at the fundamental of the personal computing era. As I mentioned, compare with the mainframe and mini computer, the advantage of the personal computing era is extremely horizontal, So that's the reason why you can drive each and every component, including the software and hardware, to that low cost, and so that all the people can enjoy such a low cost computing. I think that's the real advantage of the extreme open system. But unfortunately, people forget one thing, that no matter what kind of product, eventually is to fulfill the end customers, how to provide the value, how to fulfill his wants, his needs, his desire. This is actually has to be vertical, okay, instead of horizontal. So before, this kind of work, may be mostly done by Intel or by Microsoft, and I think this is going to change when you, transition into the ubiquitous cloud computing. That's why I mentioned that, in this new ubiquitous cloud computing era, the open system, I think, is still important. Okay, still important. The reason that Apple, can try to have Apple's kingdom is because Apple already have enough volume. Okay, but I think there is some way that you can at the same time take the advantage of the open system, and at the same time, how to drive, from the vertical point of view, how to drive the best experience And Steve Jobs, believed that, if you want to drive the best experience, you need to have the whole vertical, close kind of approach. But I believe, that's why, I've been talking about the design thinking concept. This is always start from people, start from the life experience, how to drive the best experience. And then you still can leverage the open system. So I think for Taiwan, actually I believe, no matter for Taiwan or like you mentioned that, eventually like Google, Apple, Samsung, those big giants, to compete with them, I think the only way is still how to drive, the best, leverage the most from the open system. I think even Apple is still leveraging that, right? Samsung is the company who still try to do the close, the vertical integration. But I don't think, that's the only way to succeed. I think the open system, still can provide very good advantage. But the key is how to provide the best user experience. You should even try to provide better experience than what Apple can provide. No matter from audio, from 5 senses, from the whole software experience, the user interface, everything. This is why we've been internalizing the design thinking methodology throughout the entire company. We are still, working very hard. But I think that's one of the things that we believe, for the Taiwanese industry, we need to learn. We don't have to give up, but we are very good at. Okay, the open system, the cost, the speed. But I think we need to learn, how to drive to provide the best experience for the end customer. Okay.
I will try to rephrase your question into, say, what's the challenges for PC makers and manufacturers, okay? In the past years, I think all our PC makers and manufacturers has been trying to lower our cost, and in the meantime try to put more capacity, memory capacity, disk capacity, or computing capacity into the box. And then suddenly one day, they wake up and they realize the users, the consumers, doesn't necessarily need all this capacity, all this power anymore, because companies like Google and Facebook has changed the behavior pattern of the user. In the past, user would store all his files locally in his PC. Now, most of them could be stored in the cloud. So the user doesn't need such a big capacity anymore. In the past, a user may want to edit or process a very large file for his document, 200-page document. So he needs a lot of memory space, disk space, and very powerful CPU so that the Word software or the PowerPoint software can run smoothly. Now, if you put your document in the cloud, basically Google Doc can handle all the editing, and all you need is a browser. So suddenly you don't need that much capacity in storage, you don't need that much computing power. So the expertise, the skill our PC makers developed in the years, suddenly they found it's not their competition edge anymore, because a lot of the processing has been moved up to the cloud. So this is one challenge. The other challenge is that Apple, for example, what's the impact of Apple to the local PC manufacturers? They come up with a number of new ways of very convenient user interaction. So although the cost of Apple devices may not be as low cost as other Taiwan PC manufacturer products, but basically they attract all the users because they like the user interaction. They like the style of the device. They like the user interaction feeling. So you say, well, Acer, Asus, or any other PC notebook is much cheaper than Apple, but the users are moving away and going to the Apple platform devices. So I think that basically there are two challenges. The first challenge is the cloud. The cloud is changing the way people are using the PC. People are expecting less and less technical capability on the PC because they're relying more and more on the cloud. Second is people are expecting more on the user friendliness of the device rather than the features, technical features of the device. So our PC makers has to shift their expertise or their innovation into user behavior. I know ASUS is putting a lot of resources in cloud, right? So that's a very good direction. ASUS is also coming out with a lot of new devices which has also very friendly user interaction, like 变形金刚 in English, I don't know. So the Transformer, I'm sorry. So that's a very good model for Taiwan PC manufacturer to follow. Put more on the user behavior, user model, user interaction, and less on the technical features. I think that's the general direction.
Thanks for your comments. A little bird told me that there's a lot of young, talented people in the audience, so we're going to move one question, originally being way down in the bottom to the top. It's also about Facebook. Facebook just acquired the app, Instagram, in an amount of $1 billion US. It's quite interesting because this company, which is only founded 51 days, and also only has 13 people in that company, and the whole market cap right now is actually bigger than the New York Times Group. New York Times Group is about 960 million US. So the question is, number one, do you think they really have the value of this company? And which kind of value they do have? The second question is, right now, we haven't seen a lot of entrepreneurs in Taiwan, but you see a lot of young talented people, maybe they still have their full-time job, but they are moonlighting in the nighttime, working on their own app. They are waiting for the breakthrough. So what do you think the young kids, other than the coffee shop or the other things, which kind of business they could start up in the new era of the technology? So there's two questions. Number one, what's the value of this acquiree Instagram? And number two, if the young kids, they really want to do something, what do you think they could do? You first. We talk about this one.
Yeah, so, I mean, of course, Facebook paid $1 billion for Instagram, and Facebook itself is valued at, it is $100 billion. I'm not sure if Facebook is even really making any real money. And of course, Instagram has zero revenue. So I think these valuations are not really connected to, I mean, I think they're aspirational in a certain sense. They're imaginary. You can do a lot with them, but I'm not sure how sustainable they are. We'll have to see what that turns out to be. I was wrong because when I heard that Mark Zuckerberg had refused to sell for $1 billion, I thought he was crazy. So I was wrong about that. So I don't know if those valuations say very much. I don't know if you should pay attention to them until they start actually making money. Even Google Plus, who knows whether Google is making any money from that? They're making money from other things. So social media and Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter, I'm just not sure that that's actually making lots of revenue. They have high valuations, but we'll see if they make it. So I wouldn't pay attention so much to that. The other question about young people making apps in their bedroom or their garage, yes, I mean, I think if you're willing to fail, because most of those apps fail. Yeah, Instagram won, but that was one out of how many have, out of millions probably. So I think, yes, you should go and try and do an app, but I think you should have very low expectations about what it will do. It's not going to be $1 billion, but you'll learn a lot from doing it, and it's a cheap education. So from it, something good will happen, but not necessarily that you're going to sell it to Facebook. So I think the more failure people have, the better entrepreneurs they become. I don't know your own history and how many failures you had, but I'm sure you had a number of them, and that was actually probably a very powerful influence on your success. And I know that the people I know, that many of them had many failures before they had success. And even the Instagram guys, I don't know what their story is, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was not the first thing that this is probably something they've tried again and again. So I think one of the virtues of Silicon Valley culture is that it tolerates and embraces and encourages failure. And if you're going to make some apps and have some failures, I would say that's a great thing. And it's worth doing it just to fail.
I think maybe we have to look at this, more from a strategic point of view. From Facebook, I think, as you mentioned, currently it's zero revenue, right? But maybe we have to judge from, what's, the roadmap that Facebook would like to, to see. And for example, we talk about ubiquitous cloud computing. This kind of important mega trend or the new trend, if that fits to their strategic direction, I think maybe they will have their own evaluation and decide the value. That's my thought, because I'm not quite familiar with this company yet. But about the second question, the young generation, I think they all know that now there is a big opportunity for the app. I think it's going to be a very, very important, economy, right? Economy, For that, I believe that, actually I also would like to encourage, the Taiwanese, young people try to drive more innovation to leverage this kind of opportunity. Many people may mention that maybe the Taiwanese market is too small, but I think if you look at the fundamental of the Taiwanese infrastructure, we have to admit that we need to be agile. Okay, we need to be able to to respond very fast. The speed is still a very important advantage that we have. Another is innovation. We need to drive innovation. Okay, and I think for this new ubiquitous cloud computing era, there will be a lot of possibilities that you can drive the innovation, and the population sometimes is not the issue. Okay, you need to have the test bed. Okay, to cultivate the advanced innovation. So I think you can see how Korea has been doing in the past few years. And we still have the advantage that if we can really drive the best innovation, I think China is also another very good possible potential market. So this is indeed, I think, a great opportunity for our young generation, how to really drive the innovation. That's another very important angle, for Taiwanese industry. Yes.
Okay, well, certainly Facebook has a lot of cash. They can buy whatever they want. In terms of evaluation, different people see different value on different things. For example, a girl may be very attractive to me, but not attractive to you or to Kevin, right? The company, you mentioned Google Plus, right? You were wondering if Google Plus is making any money. I would say that if Google Plus was a business run by an independent company instead of part of Google, you wouldn't survive. But Google Plus is valuable because it has synergy with other Google product lines. Okay, so by the same token, I would say whatever Facebook buy, in their minds they see some synergy, and I think in Silicon Valley, a lot of startups, I suspect in their minds they are thinking of somewhere along the road, their company may come up with a good product, but it will not survive on the market by itself. But the product may be appreciated by certain big companies like Facebook or Google, and then their company may be bought off by those big companies. and then they get a lot of cash for what they did.
I would just say that I think synergy is often overrated in terms of acquisitions. I mean, there's this long history of things that were purchased at very high prices for synergy.
Yeah.
It just was not there, and so
yeah, I agree.
It's an excuse sometimes.
Yeah, I totally agree. But in the eyes of Facebook, they worth that much. In Chinese, we say lovers, 情人眼里出西施, right? So when you're in love, your girlfriend is the most pretty girl in the world. So you are willing to buy anything for your girlfriend when you're in love, right? And so I would say a lot of the startup companies in Silicon Valley, they're really looking for some opportunity to be appreciated by this kind of big company and be bought off at some stage. And so that's the environment in Silicon Valley. Sometimes they don't, but usually if they do get bought off, then they're rewarded financially. Although the company may not go all the way to IPO or become very successful. But in Taiwan, all the startups, they don't have this environment to be appreciated by this kind of big global companies because they're located here. If there's a product, very good product developed in Taiwan, they may not be appreciated, but the same product, a similar product may be appreciated in Silicon Valley by some big company, and they may be bought off by Google or Facebook. So I agree with Johnny that we know we need innovation, we need a lot of features to really help build this environment. I think the big environment is we don't have that kind of big global company to look around for small individual technical features they want to buy off. And I also agree with you that synergy is sometimes overhyped. And then a lot of those acquisitions sometimes didn't pay off. But sometimes if they get only one or two things that got paid off, it's worthy. For example, Android, right? Android was outside Google before, earlier. But Android, once it got acquired by Google, Android has this huge potential, not realizable before when it was an independent company. So it's I think it's a process of hunting, and not everything you hunt is worth the money. But if you get one or two really worthy items, you got paid off.
Thanks for the comments. So right now the situation is the price tag is over there, $1 billion, but the value is still under question. I remember it's about a couple years back, you also mentioned about internet booming, and you also doubt the value of that. And right now it's more like a deja vu over again. We see that. And so this time we need to cross our finger and still watch closely. And for the young kids, you really want to start your business. I think you already give them really lesson, which is prepare for the worst, which means you get nothing back. But get ready for the next. Still try. And I think it's also a lot of people doubt where Taiwan still have entrepreneurship. But apparently we see the younger generation, especially Generation Y, they start to hit the ground running, try to do something. I think it's good. The second question I think is easy for you to answer. The question is why you don't use smartphone and which kind of device you are using. And the same question would be to the other two speakers, which kind of device you are using and why.
I don't have a smartphone because I'm waiting for the iPhone 5. I have an ancient Motorola cell phone I've had for 10 years, and one person knows the number. That's my wife. And actually recently, I went. My mom is sick. She was in the hospital. She didn't have a cell phone. I gave her my cell phone for 10 days, and she could use it because nobody called it. So I'm just not a very mobile person, but it doesn't. Actually, I'm serious. When the iPhone 5 comes out, I'll get the iPhone 5. So.
When Apple for nuts. Launch the iPhone 5 as soon as possible. Johnny, which kind of device you've been using?
Well,
actually, for me, I think maybe within my role, I'm a engineer, so I actually love all those gadgets, and especially because, I mentioned that from ASUS point of view, we need to, really understand the benchmark, what's the best user experience, So now I think I'm just, too much burdened by a lot of prototype, Like I mentioned, when we launched our platform in Taiwan, actually I mentioned that during the Chinese New Year, I leveraged my house two floor, and I try to drive the Wi-Fi performance and try to switch between the two access points. And my wife, thought I'm crazy, And then because somewhere around, my house, actually, the phone signal is actually pretty weak. And that's a very good, stress test, for our platform. So actually, I try to do it, but I'm still not comfortable. So I actually convinced my wife, to go to the department store and also some scenery, sparks. And then I did see, a lot of difference, because of the, in Taiwan, I think the 3G signal is quite, different. So for me, I think I love, the gadgets and also to drive the innovation. I think you always need to, and sometimes even, if the competitors' product, you need to, don't be shy, you just have to use. Otherwise, how can you understand their strength? How can you know what's the timeless design? Yeah, including, the beauty, everything. I think that's very important, yeah. So I try my best to use all the different kind of, especially those are really the good, product that you can benchmark. That's my thought.
I used to have an iPhone, but when I joined Google gave me a new phone, so I used to, Google phone. But frankly, I think the use of a cell phone, how heavy does a cell phone play in your life, the role in your life, really depends on the working environment. If I can work at home like a Soho or stay in my office most of the time without moving around, cell phone is of not too much value for me, because on my notebook or PC I can have Skype, email, chat, everything, and keep connected with all my working partners. But for the last 2 months when I joined the government and keep going from meeting to meeting role, I use my cell phone 10 times more heavier than before, because on the car I need to send a text message to my secretary saying that dinner is cancelled, dinner would be postponed, whatever. So I guess I agree with you. I really envy you. I don't really want to bring a cell phone with me all the time, because it's like a string attached, and really limit. I don't want everybody to know where I am, but I guess right now I don't have the freedom of flexibility. So I need to be kept track and be on a string. So that's the purpose of cell phone, keep me on a string.
Could I elaborate a little bit more, because I didn't answer the question about smartphone itself. I think for smartphone itself, I do believe that that's very important for the ubiquitous cloud computing. Before, people are chained to our computers at home or at office, right? So now you actually the ubiquitous computing everywhere because of the mobile computing, and of course our platform is trying to also expand your business, expand your experience, and not limited by the small screen. But the key is because of this ubiquitous cloud computing, and we mentioned about the solo mode, we mentioned about the offline to online, the augmented reality. So I think I definitely believe that you need to use the smartphone so that you can really get used to this new kind of digital life experience. Yes, there should be far more that we have to experience. Yeah.
Sure, thanks. Now we getting back to some questions maybe a little bit more serious. A lot of people saying that Taiwan is actually equipped with very strong technology power because they say Taiwan has dozens really excellent engineers. And you have a very good story about how many Taiwanese engineers is actually in the world. But do you really agree on this one? We have a lot of good engineers. Does that really mean that we really have a very strong technology power? And if we agree on this one, how are we going to capitalize on this power in the future to really transform into the next decades? Yeah. Kevin first.
To be honest, I mean, I can only think about this on my feet because I haven't been consumed with the problems of Taiwan. But it seems to me that having a very strong, I mean, you export engineers, at least to the U.S. I'm surrounded by engineers who grew up in Taiwan, and in Silicon Valley there's many of them, and so obviously that's the culture you have for producing engineers, and I think that's a strong half of the equation. I think what we're finding out, though, is that just being able to make something is not sufficient, even make it well. The more important question is, what do you want to make? Are you making the right thing? And so that other half of it, which is this sort of design approach or this marketing or the human factor, is the important part that I think needs to be complemented with the very strong engineering. So I think engineering is a fantastic asset. It's an essential asset, but it's not the complete set that you need in this kind of environment where more and more countries, more and more robots can make things, but steering that so that the right things are made and they're made in the right way, that becomes a real challenge. That's much more difficult, and it's a much higher level challenge in the sense that it requires a kind of more rounded education. It requires a more rounded vision of the future and a bigger vision of technology, I think, so that it includes the idea that it's a human endeavor. It's not just features, it's not just performance. It's deeper into the psychic of what it means to be a human. And so I think that other larger aspect has to be cultivated and present to really make the most of engineering. And so right now we have, I think it's really, I did a collection of objects that were found, including Apple, that have this tagline that says, designed in California. And so I thought that was like, you know, that was a very clever idea that this emphasis on the design aspect of it, it wasn't engineered, it was designed in California. And so that, I think, is going to be an essential component that you have to pair with the very strong engineering. So yes, engineering, good, more engineers, but complement that with this other part of that process, which is imagining what it is that you're going to design and how it's going to be used and all that kind of stuff. I think it's really critical.
Taiwan is really lucky. I think if you talk about, you know, at the time of mainframe or mini computer, I think we can say that Taiwan has no technology. At that time, the best is actually you can use, you know, like the IBM machine, like the DEC machine, and you run the, you know, the application software on top of that. And then you don't really have the fundamental, you know, of the computer technology. But because of the personal computer, I think we have a great chance. I think I still remember 30 years ago how we tried our best to reverse engineer all the hardware and software into, you know, the detail, and I think we really need to really establish our own, you know, fundamental technology. And today, I think we have the confidence that we can actually outperform all the other, you know, computer engineers in the rest of the world. But frankly speaking, I think if talking about today, I think that's still not enough. I think two things we need to drive all ourselves. One is even we are good at, you know, those computer architecture, those fundamental computer technology, so that, you know, when the digital become the core of the 3C, we still have the capability, to compete with all the other countries. But for this new ubiquitous cloud computing era, it's not enough. We need to have even some more fundamental research, that kind of deeper level. I think that portion maybe Taiwan still left behind. Some other most advanced countries like US, like even Japan or Germany. Those are what we need to, when we really want to become the top, okay, to compete with all the top tier kind of competitors. The second, I think, is Kevin already mentioned, and I also try to highlight in our presentation that another is how to really drive the design thinking kind of methodology and how to drive the best user experience, including art, including beauty, including the user experience. I think you also mentioned many times. That portion, I think, also we need to drive very hard. Yes.
I think your question was, do we Taiwan have good engineers, and how do we make use of those good engineers if we do, right? That depends on the definition of good. Well, how do you mean by good engineers? I would say in Taiwan there are a lot of hard-working engineers in Taiwan, but hard-working is not necessarily good engineers. Okay, and if you are, especially if you are looking at innovation, a very busy engineer it would be very difficult for a very busy engineer to be creative and innovative. That's why I said, take Google, for example, my previous job. Google allows 20% free time for every employee, because for that 20% free time they don't have to spend on the 20% free time on their daily work. They can spend on whatever they want if their manager approves. Okay, so that's a way of promoting creativity. But coming back to the case of Taiwan, on one hand, everybody is so hardworking, and so they are tied up by daily work, and they don't have time to be creative. But on the other hand, we don't want everybody to be creative, because that's not their nature. The only thing we want is to identify those creative engineers and allow them to be able to work in an environment that allow them to be inspired and not to be tied down 18 hours per day by daily work. So that's a challenge for Taiwan. Identify those good ones and allow them to be, allow them to be working in an environment which is not very busy and not very boring work.
Thanks. I think it's really enlightening. First of all, the good engineers is only half of the equation. The second thing, Taiwan didn't even get half of the equation, because we only have a well-trained engineer, but not really good engineer maybe. So we're going to take the final question, our panel discussion, then we're going to take the question from the floor. So the final question is, I think we talked about this one globally. A lot of technology companies, they're looking for a new direction, including solar energy, biotech. So generally speaking, globally, how you look at the opportunities and challenges in the global technology industry? Say if you have $100, you have $100 million you want to invest, which kind of industry you'll be more interested in?
Me personally, or what do I think would be the most? Because obviously this is being answered by the capital markets right now, so we have an answer to that. Just look where the money's going. But
invest now, maybe you will get your money back 2 years later. So I'm not talking about the investment before and we really reach a profit right now. But what I'm saying is, if you have money right now, well, maybe we don't talk about money. We talk about, you look at the technology industry right now, which direction you're getting to increase the largest value of your portfolio. Yeah.
I believe in the value that and the power of making tools. So I think the highest leverage that you can have in a society is to develop new tools, and enabling tools, because then they can enable other things down the line. So if I was taking a long-term view, I would invest into basic research, as you were saying. That is the highest leverage that you can do. But the problem is that it may not yield for 20 or 30 years, and so you have to be kind of like a government or somebody who has long-term thinking to be able to do that, because most companies can't afford that. But that is the highest leverage. So if that's the question, I would say I would invest that $100 billion into basic research for long term, because that would be the highest possible yield you could get out of that, but it's going to be a long-term coming.
If you talk about only 2 years, I think, if only 2 years, I think, of course, you need to be more practical, and maybe those which is related with what we just talking about, the use cloud computing, the mobile computing trend, and those infrastructure related with this, I think would be a good, candidate to think about. But if you think a little bit longer term, I think maybe still we need to think about the biotech, Kevin's book, What Technology Wants, actually is a very profound, kind of book. He invented, a new word called technion, and we need to look longer. And actually, we even believe that the past history, a lot of things actually need to re-innovate. For example, people start to understand that, even the plastics, maybe it's not the right innovation from recycling point of view, from the green tech point of view, and I actually chat with Kevin just now that we both challenge why the God know how to use the carbon brain, okay, and we instead use the silicon brain, okay. It's a little bit inferior, compared with the carbon brain. If you use the silicon brain, then you cannot, the carbon dioxide is a gas, right? You can, breathe, and then you can exhale the carbon dioxide, but actually the silicon oxide is concrete. You cannot do that. So it's just right. The carbon is better, than silicon. So I think people are talking about the green technology, talking about the new energy, talking about the biotech. Those are what we may have to relearn, and maybe there will be some other good alternative than the today's plastics. Today's plastics actually use up all the energy we have accumulated for such a long time. So I think if you think about longer term, I do believe that maybe like the biotech, like the new energy, even the blue economy, are those that we should try to invest. Yeah.
If I have $100 million, I would retire right away and invest it in my retirement life. Seriously, I wouldn't invest the money on ICT business directly. I think I'm too late already. People invest in Apple. If I go to buy Apple stocks, it's not a high point. It's not worth it. So I would try to identify some new emerging applications of ICT. For example, Kevin, you just mentioned healthcare, right? Healthcare. There's definitely one field where I think ICT has more and more potential coming up. And so I would say there's good opportunity there, and that's where the money should go.
So let's hit the Q&A right now. We already collect the question from the audience. The first one is really eye-catching. She actually smiled to you, I guess. She want to ask, how does technology make our lives better? You could read this. I think this is a really interesting question.
Yeah, the question is, how does technology make our lives better? This was actually a challenge that a poet and anti-technologist Wendell Berry asked, was that has technology ever made humans better? And I think yes, I would say there are many technologies that have made us better people, And the first I would suggest to consider is the technology of reading and writing. I think reading and writing made us more and better humans. The ability to write down, to write down laws, to have a system of law, the ability to remember and pass on information to multiple generations in the future, the abilities to have writing to communicate research and discovery. There's no doubt that reading and writing is a technology that's made us better. And so I think in the same way that the internet and the web is like writing, making us better people. That we will be better humans because of our ability to communicate in potential with anybody else on the planet, and that weaving together, that socialization that's occurring right now, that's beginning, makes us better people, makes us more accountable to each other, it makes us more aware of, it enlarges our circle of empathy so that we can be empathetic. So writing is a good example of something in the past, and the internet is a good example of something right now that makes us better people.
Thanks. I think for Q&A, most of the time we only ask one people, but if you, the other speaker, want to add on some color, welcome to do that. The next question is actually for Simon. It's in Mandarin. I tried to do the translation. It says Taiwanese government has a policy on ICT to develop the digital streaming or the other streaming, whatever streaming. But the question is whether we should use an open attitude instead of the regulation attitude. 就是说我们是不是用开放的态度取代管制？ We change from the open mode to the regulation. Should we transform from the regulation mode to the open mode?
Or internet?
For the ICT policy, everything about ICT.
The open mode, the more open attitude is the way it should be. I think you need to have fair competition. And under a fair competition environment, you need to be open. I think the regulation, the purpose of regulation is to regulate the players from being providing in unfair competition. So once you use the regulation as a tool to make an environment of fair playing ground for every player, then it should be an open environment. And by open, I mean open not only within Taiwan, but internationally. For example, privacy laws. For example, privacy laws we need to be compatible internationally. That's one example.
I think the reason why I picked up this question is to just let the audience know. I think Simon already worked on a lot of things to open up the competition. So the next question is a question from Mr. Wu. He basically has a question for Kevin, saying that Taiwan is very notorious for long hours, working long hours, but the salary is really low, and is even lower than what we have before. So what's your view on this one and any suggestion of this one? Thanks for Mr. Wu.
Move. I mean, you could. You don't have to live in Taiwan, right? That's the market at work. I mean, I think that's. I say that in jest, but actually I'm serious. Is that if enough people are dissatisfied and you move away, then that forces the market to accommodate. So I don't. I mean, that's really the only solution I can imagine. If you're working long and being underpaid, then either you need to get a new job or work for somebody else. Because I can't really imagine another solution to that.
Well, thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Kevin. Danny Ling also has a similar question, so I'm going to skip it.
Well, that's a pattern. So a lot of people are feeling that they're working too long and they're not getting paid. But I'm trying to think of what, maybe you should ask these guys. Why are you asking me?
Yeah, I work across the board, I have to restate, well, everybody in every single country have the same feeling. But given the real stats, Taiwan is actually facing the most serious problem in terms of the low salary and long hours, which is actually true. So maybe Johnny, you could.
I think definitely we should try to adjust that. But I think, as Simon mentioned, I think another even better approach is actually we need to how to drive better productivity, better innovation, and then I think work even smarter, and then I think you can have higher leverage factor, and then I think you can actually reward to the employees. I think that's also an important aspect. So at the same time, we need to figure out how to adjust this kind of situation. But I think the best way to really resolve this issue is we need to also how to enhance our productivity. Yeah.
Thanks, Johnny. The answer is really short. The question is very big. The next question is from a student majoring in computer science. He's asking, he or she is asking, it is a world changing so fast that nobody knows what's going to be the next killer app. But apparently a lot of people know already. But he wants you to give advice to a student right now who's still studying for his graduate degree in computer science. Can you give him some advice what to do to confront the future needs? What he could do right now for like 5 years or 10 years later?
I just want to make sure I understand. So he's in, right. So he's pursuing his graduate degree in computer science, and he'd like to know what to do. So, boy. Yeah, no, I mean, he prefaces with the idea that the world is changing very fast, and so it is true that the language, whatever language you're learning, is probably not going to be the language that you're going to work in. I think what I have learned about this fast-moving world is that by far the best skill to have is the skill of learning itself, of learning how to learn, and that whatever it is that he's going to graduate with a graduate degree, but still you're going to have to kind of relearn everything once you get into the work, and then everything, you're going to be new again. So I think in a certain sense, learning how to keep learning is really the ultimate skill, because whatever it is that's fashionable this year, in 5 years from now, it's going to be thrown out, and there'll be something completely new. There'll be a new platform, there'll be a new language, there'll be new hardware. And so I think the best way, to answer your question, to confront the future needs is to become really great at learning how to learn. And then you are set.
I think I totally agree with Kevin that the lifetime learning is a very important attitude. Let me directly answer this question. I think I got 2 points. The first is, I think for those who graduate from the computer science, the best way is you still have to sharpen your sword. Okay, in your field, there will be a lot of software engineers, computer science, engineers, but how you can excel, how you can really, drive a better innovation, or you can deliver a better quality software compared with the other engineers. I think you still need to sharpen your sword. And when we talk about, and the second is we mentioned about today's innovation. You always need to start from the design thinking, from the people, the experience, and then the desirability, and then you still have to fulfill with the technical feasibility and business viability. So actually the design thinking actually is a superset of the right brain and left brain. So still, your fundamental capability, your technology is still very important. So I think one is you still have to sharpen your sword. And the second is you need to enlarge your scope. Try to drive yourself, including the lifetime learning, to really really drive so-called full brain, including the right brain and left brain, kind of, thinking. Otherwise, very difficult to compete, in this kind of new era. Yes.
So thanks for the takeaway. Basically, Johnny just mentioned sharpen your thought, and Kevin mentioned that learn how to learn. I think it's actually quite interesting, learn how to learn. Right now, a lot of people, they are learning, they don't even know how to learn. So I think it's a really good lesson we could take away from here. The final question is about the sharing. Johnny just mentioned about open, and you mentioned about the sharing. They have actually two questions. I'll pass along the cheat sheet later. Question number one, to what extent will we share our personalized information in the future? To which extent? The second question is, who will own this shared information? You mentioned what can be shared won't be valuable. Then what will be valuable in the future? Yeah. Exactly word by word here.
So one of the things I was saying was that anything that can be shared will be shared, and that I don't think there's very much that somebody somewhere or some group aren't going to be sharing. It doesn't mean that everybody will share everything. I'm just saying that some people will be sharing anything. And so, and that includes very personal information. And that's because we are very social beings, and we get, gossiping is even kind of a sharing of things. We get kind of a human satisfaction out of sharing in both directions, and that is just so basic to us that we will share these things, and the technology is allowing us to share things in new ways. We've had old ways of doing it. Now we have new dimensions, new ways of sharing, new economics of sharing, and that's the great excitement and the thrill is finding out all the ways that we can possibly share. And that's why I like to think about what we're doing, say this coming century, is like how many possible ways can we share things about ourselves? And that's what we're going to kind of explore collectively. So I mentioned that you can't share, won't be valuable. What that's referring to is this idea that copies of things don't become valuable. What becomes valuable over time are the intangibles that can't be copied. And I think that's in terms of an economic, a business, that the things that are easily copied become very, very cheap. And the things that can't be copied become very valuable. And the things that can't be copied are things like immediacy, authenticity, personalization. By definition, personalization can't be copied. If you're going to personalize something, you make it once, and then the next person has to be personalized. So you can have, the example I like to give is a piece of music that you can find online for free, but if you want that personalized or custom to you, the acoustics of your own living room, you'll pay for that. And you're not really paying for the music, you're paying for the personalization. So a lot of things are going to operate that way in terms of devaluing copies of things, but that's not the same thing as sharing things, because lots of what times you're sharing is one of. It's not really something that can't be copied. It's the experience of sharing that can't be copied. So sharing is something that's also in itself not necessarily copyable. So I think there's maximum sharing, and then copies of things become less and less valuable. That's a longer story.
I think we try our best to answer most of the questions already, but the time is up right now. It's about 5 o'clock. But I think it's a really great opportunity. I really want three of you could try to wrap up what you have been thinking, like using 1 minute and share with the audience. If you want them to take away something from the panel discussion, what you encourage them to think in the next couple months. Thanks. Maybe Simon first. Yeah.
Well, I think the subject is a world of changing technology, right? So you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next year. So the only thing I can say is be open, and be ready to change.
Charlie, please.
I think I already mentioned that we are at the crossroad, of the critical transformation from the personal computing era to the ubiquitous cloud computing era. So I actually would like to encourage all of our audience try to be more well prepared. No matter you are a student or you are already working, how to be prepared and for this new ubiquitous cloud computing era, including like what I mentioned, how to drive like the design thinking methodology to adapt to this kind of new era. I think that's important. And if what can be shared, will be shared, that's inevitable kind of trend. I think my advice to our young people is those which could not be shared, even with this kind of ubiquitous cloud computing, you can leverage a lot from the internet. It's far more easy than before to learn something. But I think like the lifetime learning, the independent thinking, I think those kind of things are still very difficult to really copy, and those will become very important factors that you can beat your competitors. Yeah, that's my thought. Yes, so the independent thinking become more and more important. Yeah.
Sorry for the discrimination. I think you fly all the way here, so you don't have any time limits. Say whatever you want to say, as long as possible.
I want to say, don't believe anything we say. We're old guys, and you should challenge anything you said, and you really should try and challenge our assumptions, and find out for yourself, and try it yourself. And I think you'll learn far more that way that will be valuable and useful, because we've had our chance, and this is your chance now if you're young, in trying to invent the future. So I think we're, like Johnny said, I think we're at a really interesting time when it's easier and easier for somebody to kind of actually do something. It used to be that the tools were really very distant for anybody to want to do something themselves. They kind of had to be part of a big company, or that was the goal, was to work for something large or work for the government or something, because the tools for getting things done were larger scale. And now we're at this point where really anybody, we talk about this, making the apps, you can do something yourself. There's enough tools and the barriers are low enough that you can at least try something. And so if I have to say anything, it's like try something, do something with yourself or a small group, make some mistakes, make some new mistakes, do something, see how far you get, and then try it again. And you'll, whatever your way you want to change the world, whether it's nonprofit or profit or do good or make a lot of money, doesn't matter. I think we really at this time where we have a set of tools that will allow you to try something. Whether physical, you can go in and make something yourself with Arduino, or you can make an app, or you can start a nonprofit or a movement or Kickstarter. It's like do something and try it. And I think that's the way to actually change the world. Don't wait, just go and try it. Just go and do it. And I think that's the message I would like to leave people with, is that we're at that point where you can have some effect, and at least start that effect by trying something and not waiting for the right conditions or a lot of money or a lot of time, whatever it is. We're at this moment where you can start tomorrow or today. And not everything's going to work, but that's fine. It will eventually work if you persevere. And what a fabulous time this is to be here, because I know when I was growing up, we didn't have that. That was not how the world was. It took, if you wanted to make a movie, oh my gosh, you needed $1 million. If you wanted to write a book, you needed to have the approval of a publisher. If you wanted to start a organization or a company, you need to have permission from somebody. You don't need permission now. That's the message, is that you have permission. I'm giving you permission. Please do it. And so I think this is just a great time, and it doesn't matter where you live. Yeah, the markets are different, but we really are part of something global. I mean, think about what Skype was. Estonia. Were they from Estonia? A little tiny country. They still did it. It doesn't. I think we're really really are part of a global culture, and I think you're in a great position here in Taiwan to you have great infrastructure to do something globally as well as locally. So anyway, we give you permission to be inventive and to make a wonderful world. So I'm so glad that you've invited me to be here. I love Taiwan. It's really great to be back, and thank you for your attention. I hope that we did something that was useful, and thank you again for inviting me here.
Before wrapping up this afternoon session, we have to say special thanks to Minister today again. Thanks for 社长发行人, and we have to say thanks to Simon, Johnny, and ASUS. Next time I'll pronounce right. And special thanks to the permission from Kevin that allowed us to do every single thing we want to do, if not affecting the other people. And special thanks to the audience here. I couldn't see you clearly, but I believe after this session, I think all of us will really learn how to learn. Thanks.
实在是太精彩了，让我们以热烈的掌声再一次谢谢 Kevin 以及所有语坛贵宾。Thank you, Kevin. Thank you all.